So, good morning and a warm welcome to the audience here in our little podcast studio at Impact Hub Zurich, and to you, the listeners of our BearingPoint Talk podcast. My name is Bernstorf. I'm director at BearingPoint, and I'm the leader of our digital process management team in Germany, and it's my pleasure to be the host this morning for the show. The topic is digital transformation with process mining, turning process transparency into actionable insights. And I'm happy to have fantastic guests this morning who I would like to introduce to you now. So firstly, I do welcome Heymen Jansen. Heymen is Group Vice President and Head of Advanced Process Analytics at ABB. And more important for us this morning, he's responsible for the global rollout of process mining across all factories, sales units, and service centers at ABB. So I assume for ABB that's a big task, Heymen, isn't it?
For sure it is. We're going to talk about it.
ABB is a multinational Swiss-based company with approximately 140 or even more than 140,000 employees, represented in more than 100 countries.
Yep.
And 5 global business units, and it has a strong focus on industrial automation, robotics, and discrete automation. And something that I also didn't know but learned during my preparation for today's podcast is that in the Fortune 500 list of Change the World companies, ABB is ranked 8th.
Wow.
So you could say ABB is truly a technology leader who is also pioneering new technologies. I also do welcome Leonardo Gambini. Good morning, Leonardo. He's the regional sales manager for Switzerland at Celonis and process mining expert. For those who do not know Celonis, Leo, can you explain a little bit what we should know about Celonis?
So first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and discuss about my favorite topic, which is process mining. Celonis is now 8 years old, so we were a startup a couple of years ago, but now we grew very fast, double digits every year. And at the moment we have more than 500 employees spread around the world with different offices. And yes, we are leading the market at the moment with process mining, which is a very interesting topic that we will discuss further now in this podcast.
Yes, and if I may add, because you said you're leading the market, if you read about Gartner and Forrester, you could say it's one of the leading or the leading company. And last year, Celonis reached in Germany a market valuation of more than $1 billion, which makes it one of the rare unicorns in the German startup scene, I would say. So that makes it 2 heavyweights in terms of ABB and Celonis here in our podcast this morning. So thank you very much for being here. In today's podcast, we would like to talk about process mining. And obviously we will do that by looking a little bit behind the scenes of how ABB is leveraging process mining technology. And we also will learn from you, Leo, how other clients are dealing with the topic. But I think before we deep dive into the topic, it's important to explain to our audience here and also to our listeners what exactly process mining is, because it's a relatively new discipline, which was not here 10 years ago. I remember my first process mining project was like 7 years ago, and it was a very IT-driven, technology-driven project, which did not really have the business user impact as we can see it today. So for the last 3 to 4 years, there's a skyrocketing interest in the topic. And maybe, Leo, you can explain in a few sentences how you would define process mining.
Sure. So process mining itself is a discipline from the analytical sector. So most of you are familiar with data mining. So what we do is we try to rebuild the as-is process of companies and to create all the different variances a process have during the operational usage of process. So what we do is we extract those information from so-called digital footprints from all the applications, ERP systems, CRM systems you have in the company, and we rebuild the as-is process to then start to understand your digital process, to understand the bottlenecks, to optimize processes, so on and so forth. And today what we experience during our daily work at Celonis is that, and I guess Heymen can confirm this, processes are not static anymore, they are dynamic. So the more you know about your processes, the more you are able to act and not react, to optimize and to get faster in different ways. And I think we talk about a little bit benefits and the value of process mining.
So basically, from a technical perspective, you take the log events from the systems and then you visualize them so that you see all the process steps and variants that exist, which is still a quite technical explanation. I assume if you are rolling out process mining at ABB, you need to find a different way to explaining to your people. I remember you have something which has something to do with soccer.
Yeah, I try to keep it as simple as possible. Huh? Indeed, I compare it with just video recording a soccer game. And then the day after, the coach and the team players, they are looking to the game, they see successful actions resulting in a goal, they see loops in the process going back and forth. And that is actually the same with process mining. So you're just recording what has happened in the past and you visualize that again in a process flow. And it is quite insightful, I can tell you.
How did you get in touch with process mining? What was your first encounter?
For me, it was just a coincidence, as many things in life. I joined ABB in 2014. I was located at that time as a BU OPEX manager in Germany, and Celonis is a German company. So the first pilots started in Germany, actually in the whole country. So I got to know about it. I saw directly the benefits of getting full insight in processes. So we started then in our global BU with a global rollout, and the same with another BU. We focused at that time on net working capital because we wanted to tackle net working capital, so ITO, DSO, DPO and all that stuff. And the other unit, the transformers, they focusing very much on their own internal production processes. So it was a good combination, two completely different areas, but you're building up experience. And so, but again, it was a coincidence, and now I'm happy that we, since last year, we have started a global rollout across the whole group.
So if a company makes a decision to roll such a technology out on a global scale, usually this comes with a lot of expectations regarding the impact, the benefits that should be derived from this. Can you share a little bit what kind of expectations ABB has, what kind of benefits should be achieved?
I mean, I think that ABB has already for maybe 15 years a quite well embedded culture of continuous improvement. We have the processes for that, we have built up competencies for that, we have the systems for that, we have a very strict governance model on that, so reporting. So we are reporting on a monthly basis waste, so what kind of opportunities do we see to improve efficiency and quality and so on. And we also have many, many improvement projects, so personal improvement projects. So thousands of projects are running on a yearly basis in ABB. But now the point is, you're all familiar with the DMIC cycle. And then, defining what's exactly the problem, what's the root cause, what's the impact. That takes quite a long time if you don't have the proper systems. And with process mining, you can shorten that cycle significantly. So that means that you can do your improvement projects much faster, and you can imagine on a scale of ABB that has, of course, then significant impact. So you could say it are small improvements, but there are a lot of small improvements. And that's also what we want to do. We want to really to empower the people to make their own improvements locally.
So you basically use the process mining tool to implement classical lean management impacts like reducing waste in all kind of areas.
It's a combination of normal lean techniques, but then with, let's say, better tools to support the process.
Leo, from your experience, are there classical benefits that your clients expect to see from a process mining implementation?
Yes, for sure. Implementing process mining technology brings many different benefits, and depending on the customer, on the use case, on the process you are implementing with Celonis, depends then on the quantitative and qualitative benefits. But on a generic view, I always just like to mention 4 things, which is you get 100% process transparency. And sometimes this gives some headache to some managers. Reduce complexity. So in terms of, imagine you have a workflow on many different processes along your workflow or a process. We can reduce the complexity because we are able to show you all the variances you have in the process. And the other thing is also that we remove operational friction. It means that if you want to get more lean, more effective on your daily work, you have to get out the operational friction. And the other thing, of course, is reducing process costs. That's one of the main goals. Increasing revenue margin. If you can optimize your processes, your core processes in terms of efficiency, you definitely can increase your margins. And some use cases then also give benefits in reducing net working capital, and also in terms of, for example, internal audits or audit departments, they really can handle and improving the risk management. So many different benefits depending on the process you want to use and the use case you want to solve with process.
Yeah, and everything starts with creating this process transparency, which then can lead to various types of improvement measures. I can imagine that this process transparency, and you also indicated it already, is also a challenge because people are confronted with the as-is situation and there is no big discussion about whether this is true or not. So I'm wondering, Heymen, in your rollout at ABB, what type of challenges, for example this one, but maybe there are others where you're confronted with?
Well, I mean, let's first start with myself. I'm already 40 years busy in all kinds of functions in all kinds of industries. So then you have an idea, I've seen it all. So I know what's going on the shop floor, I know what's going on in the value chain and so on. But then when I saw for the first time, we have implemented 100 countries, so we have quite significant material to check, millions of order lines. So then I suddenly understood there's lots of variation in processes which is not necessarily wrong. So really looking to different sort of portfolios, you don't need to standardize everything, but you need to understand what makes sense or not. So you could have a complete different process in this country or another country based upon legal things and so on. Still perfectly okay. You only want to see if in that process is also waste. For us, lead time is very important. So if you reduce loops in the process and so on, or gaps in the process, you're directly also improving lead time, of course. So that's my personal, let's say, experience. So I'm happy, although I have gray hair, that I still can learn every day. Of course, you talk about transparency, how to manage that. Of course, transparency is not always appreciated by everybody, but that's okay. So we know that, and we also want to positively manage that. So we have given the chance to all the units to validate their own data, so that they could confirm the data is correct. Not necessarily nice to see, but the data is correct. And then, of course, and that's the main task we are having with the team, is to make sure that we are coaching those people to help them on the process improvement. So I don't see process mining just as a technical tool. It's something, to show hidden things, but you also need to make sure that you give the people the right support. So we need to positively coach people like a coach in a soccer team also is not burning down the players because then he knows that the game will be over anyway. So you need to positively handle that.
Very good. So basically you create, with the technology, you create the transparency on all the process variants that you have, and then you need to basically figure out what part of this complex process variant picture needs to be improved, because complexity itself is not the issue, just the part that is not desired needs to be removed. And that's something that needs to be done by the people locally who are working in the process, and therefore it's important to coach them into developing the right measures. So now we are already in the middle of what is the tagline of today's podcast, which is turning process transparency into actionable insights. And my question is, what does this actually mean? Heymen, can you give us some real-time examples that can help our listeners to understand what exactly becomes transparent and how does this contribute to actions for getting more digital as a company?
Let me take the example of automation of activities in a process. We have, of course, also in the past started to build capabilities on automating processes, so we have done quite a lot. But we also have built Celonis and we call RPA assessment to see if there are more opportunities to automate internal processes. And that's still significant. We see two things. First of all, according to the lean approach, you want to eliminate activities who are not contributing to the process. So that's the same as what you would do in lean, but now you can find it easier. So you want to reduce unnecessary manual activities. But sometimes you have also compliancy processes, so you need to do some of those activities. So then we start to look into, okay, but could we, based upon parameters, could we automate those processes? So like I said, it's all about creating speed into the organization and reduce manual activities, so to reduce lead times, but also to improve efficiency. And then last but not least, and I think I'm very enthusiastic about that, of course, because we have insight in all different type of processes, units, countries, and so on, you can do quite easily benchmarking. Mm-hmm. So you can identify quite easily the best in class. And then others can learn from that. And I think that is a super opportunity for many, many units to positively learn from others. So we do not want people to win, we want all people to win. So also to make sure that they collaborate together to make the whole company a success.
Great. It's basically also about creating global process communities that can benefit and learn from how they are improving the process in their area and then validate if they can benefit from these experiences in their own area. If you look at the situation today, I mean, you're in the program, you started the program 2-3 years ago in Germany, and then it became global. Yep. If you look at the situation today, how would you describe the as is? How many users do you have, for example? How many processes are affected? And also, very importantly, how do you ensure a sustainable use of the new software?
We made a choice to start using Celonis in all of our units. So we have a significant amount of users, so it's not, a couple of analysts, so it's really power to the people. There are the experts in the service centers, in the sales units, in the factories. We want to give them the right tools. So it's a global rollout, really brought into the local units. Two things, local improvements, of course, and I mean, they are doing these improvement projects, so we do not necessarily need to select their projects. They can select their project and we give them the tools. But we also have around 20 global process analytics. So that's more on the end-to-end value chain. And that is, of course, more the transformational side. How do we make sure that the collaboration between the units is more effective, reducing lead time? So if you have multiple units within an internal value chain, you want to speed up also the information between those units. So what's the impact when, for example, a supplier is late on the whole value chain? What is the impact when a supplier wants to expedite an order or postpone an order? And that needs to be much faster. And now having all the units connected, we can see it on the fly actually.
So we learned so much already about how things started, what kind of challenges you had to overcome, the benefits expected and achieved, and also the status of today. So there's only one last question to ask to both of you. Maybe I start with you, Leo. If you look at Celonis, what can we expect in terms of process mining technology? Will there be any new features coming out? This is your chance to write the headline of tomorrow's newspapers.
Yeah, in fact, it is. So we had our first conference in April this year, the Celosphere, in which we also announced pretty nice information in terms of new features, new functions that will be rolled out in the next coming month. So the first thing is already on the market is the Action Engine, which is a so-called digital assistant that helps you to go through the Celonis process and identify patterns along certain rules that you predefine in advance. And then in the morning, for example, you receive a signal list and then you can act instead of react to challenges and problems. So this is already on the market and many customers already are using the Action Engine. What we launch end of this month in June is the Celonis Snap, which is a very important strategic move from Celonis, which means that we give reduced solution in terms of feature functions for free on the market. So it means that customers, students, or whatever likes to use process mining, just to load up a Excel or CSV file, can already use Celonis at no cost. So this is an important step to enlarge our footprint in the market and get process mining. In terms of development, we announced also 4 most important things, which Action Engine is the first one. And then we already have use cases, and we will launch a machine learning workbench based on Python and Jupyter notebooks. So the request from customers to dig deeper in artificial intelligence and machine learning is a demand which we like to serve to customers. So the first use cases already are developed and ready to use. We will also launch an open application framework so that we can connect more and more data from other systems. And what our co-CEO invented is the term of the superfluid company. And in terms of helping customers to become more superfluid, we also have this package of what we call performance acceleration with Celonis. So customer can definitely profit from these different puzzle pieces in our standard process mining solution.
Okay, great. So the good news is we are not at the end of what is possible to do with process mining.
Not. That's
There's lots of functions will come up. Are you having any plans to implement some of what Leo just mentioned?
Yeah, we did in December a pilot within a couple of units, connecting several systems and also several processes and tools and so on, what we call the digital supply chain. So we do not want to use Celonis only for analytics, but also for operations. So connecting the operations, like Leo was explaining, so that they get better insight in potential issues in the process based upon machine learning techniques and so on. So you could call it digital twin of an organization. And I think that will be absolutely a game changer for us. So we have done the pilot, proof of concept was successful, and now we're going to do a second one to really get the value and then make the global move.
Great, so you're basically also thinking of not just using it for analyzing the process, but also to moving it to operations, using the predictive functions that Leo mentioned, the Action Engine, and implementing it in your organization. Great, thank you so much for this. We still have a Q&A session, and I would like now our audience to raise questions. If you have any, this is now your chance.
Hello. We've heard a lot about process mining of processes that have already been automated, so where the data is readily available. Now, how about do you go ahead with processes, manual processes, operations teams, where they're just working on their tasks, but you would not have the data what they're actually doing all day long? So what are the challenges with addressing non-automated processes? Can you actually mine those also, or how do you go along with those?
Thank you for the question, which is definitely something we experience in every project, by the way. So I explained before that we use digital footprints, the so-called log files, that we collect the log files to create the digital twin of the process, right? Sometimes you still have manual work. Human beings walking with a contract to a scanner, scan the contract, and then put the PDF somewhere in the system. That's definitely the case. So what our solution engineers and data scientists do is during the implementation project to take this topic, definitely, and then we build this step digital, because we have the entry point, the timestamp, and the next timestamp when the PDF is attached somewhere in a system. And our work is then to identify where it is and then connect the IDs and mapping the stuff. So it's very technical, but this is something that we experience more or less in every project.
So basically you can indicate if a process step is manually done or automatically done, or at least the time between the steps also indicates this.
We need the help of customers. So the expert has to help us to give us the information that there is a manual step. We cannot identify it from the system because we don't know the process of the customer. So we need the customer, and we are coaching customers in these topics in terms of as soon as we have the digital process and we have some problems, we discuss and we optimize already the digital process in Celonis.
Any further questions?
Myself, I'm not a huge fan of soccer, but I really do love your analogy. And I'd like to go back to phrase my question. You said that in soccer nowadays games are recorded. The coach, together with the team, does analyze this and pulls insight out of these sessions and then try to improve. In soccer, there's crazy high maturity in terms of recording technology. We have 4K, we have HDR, we have thousands of different dimensions of hundreds of cameras in one stadium. We have lactate, muscle lactate values of each player. We know how many steps each player did in one game, where he stood, what his... Big data, exactly. We have very high-paid experts as coaches, and we have teams who are looked after 24/7, sleeping patterns analyzed, etc., etc., etc. So in terms of recording capabilities, or the digital twin of the process or of the organization, what's missing for the coach, or what's the level of granularity of big data you can offer today? What would you expect coming in the future, number one? Question number two is, who are the best coaches in the enterprise? Who are typically those coaches helping the team? Number three, the question number three, what's the adoption rate within an organization, within a team, to use AI or analytics in process mining? So 3 questions: technology steps, who are the coaches, and what's the adoption rate in the organization?
Let me take the coach one. We all know the expression, a fool with a tool is still a fool. And that's also very true for process mining. So we do not want to focus on training people on technical tools. We want to train them on the capabilities. They need to understand process. They need to understand context. So it's really, I think, the job of my team, not only to focus on the technical part, but also to bring process experience in. And that's a difficult task. So, and then please consider process mining. We started there in 2014 as one of the first, together with a couple of other multinationals. So we were early adopters. Process mining is a new technology. You need to learn people how to look to data, big data. But you also need to make them understand what is happening with the data in the process. So it's a combination of traditional coaching and training of people on competencies, how to handle a process, and secondly, how to use the tool to analyze that process. Leo, I leave the technology question to you.
So I just want to add something on Heymen's answer. It is also very important that we understand the customer's issues and help them going along the issues, because sometimes we also face political topics internally. We face big challenges and we try to help them. And sometimes you need a change management project on parallel implementing on a global scale. If you talk to Asian employees or from South America, the US or European people, you have different culture topics. And then the fact that you get transparent, you need different approaches. So the coach needs to dance this multicultural thing. Big data. Scalability is key. You're right, sometimes we have too much data. The beauty in process mining, to rebuild the digital twin, the process, let's say, we just need the log files, so we don't talk about big amount of data. The important point is when we connect the process, the as-is process and all the variances of the process, with information from a data warehouse, a BW, a HANA system, because then you get intelligence out of the process. Then the amount of data is skyrocketing. But at the moment, we can handle all the projects. I have one example here. Uber is using Celonis for the customer service analysis, and they have 330 million activities a day within process mining Celonis. So at the moment, we can handle it. But definitely, it's a topic. What kind of data you want to load in the cloud? And the third question was who addressed the
adoption rate. How is it perceived by the team, by people responsible for the process?
I can give you one insight on this. Normally, when we go to prospects and we present process mining and all the benefits, and then sometimes some, especially CFO -1, CDOs, CIOs, they understand the potential. And as soon as they understand the potential, if you can create a really fan of a process mining, he definitely can leverage it in the company and also open new areas to adopt within the company. And then sometimes, and I guess Avery is also in this direction, some companies like Siemens and Vodafone, they open a competence center, excellence for process mining / analytics, predictive analytics topics, because they understood the value and the potential of this solution. It's one puzzle piece in the performance of a company, but I think one of the most important ones.
And maybe if I may add to the big data question, I think what's very important to say is that in the process mining solution, you have the ability to create dashboards, which allow you to basically mine into the relevant part of the data, which means you need to have a process expert who understands the data, obviously, and he can, by himself, create the dashboard that fits for the part of the process or the process that he wants to analyze. That makes it very powerful from an operational perspective. Okay, do we have any additional questions?
You've been talking about the initial analysis, that's one thing, and then about the digital twin and the implementation into operations. And I think the second part is where also a lot of potential lies. So when you roll out the technique and the methodology into your business units, do you have a concept of continuous improvement you also establish? Like that you, once you have analyzed the process, you continuously monitor it and then create this digital twin on a real-time or ongoing basis?
Yeah, that's actually the whole idea. So we have local projects, as I said, and we have global projects. And the global projects that are more the transformational type of projects. And there we measure on a frequent basis, weekly, and looking into what kind of opportunity do we see to improve that process. Can be many, many different things, and it's not so important what it is, but we want to measure continuously if there is impact. We are also using Celonis for one of our corporate KPIs. So it's also about, looking to the actions we are doing with, analyzing and defining opportunities for improvement. Do they also have substantial impact directly on the KPIs? And that was for us also a good way to implement it on a global scale. Because you need to have something, which basically touches all people in the organization. So it is a little bit a paradox. You never would expect that you would use a process mining tool to start with corporate reporting. But we did it because it's simple, people understand what it is. You can train them on a very small subject, but you train them very fast on the capabilities of the tool. And now we are moving to more corporate KPIs to make sure that the impact also gets bigger.
So I think what is important here to understand is that if you start with a reporting tool on the top, in order to implement something on an operational level, you need to create kind of a role governance model. Somebody needs to feel responsible to look at the data on a continuous basis and then have a team, a local team around him that he can discuss the data with in order to make the necessary changes.
Yeah, in our case, we have a governance board. So I'm heading the governance board from a group perspective. Representatives from the divisions are there, from the businesses. There we are making decisions. What are the priorities? How's the progress on validation data? What kind of issues do we have? Do we have more capabilities, possibilities to enhance the analytics? So that is driven from the businesses and the group. And the businesses are driving the process of making sure that people are assigned to use the analytics.
Perhaps to add something on the sustainability of such kind of solutions. So our process mining solution is not perceived as a one-off optimization engine that you optimize your process, then you take the next one and the next one and that's it. The best way is always to go the whole 9 yards, right? So you start to rebuild your digital process in Celonis, you optimize it, and then you monitor it. So a continuous monitoring of your existing process helps you to anticipate topics can happen. Market changes very fast. You have reorganization, you have mergers and acquisitions. So how fast can you then use the process you already have in process mining? So it's very fast. And that's the reason why the continuous monitoring is very helpful. Also because many employees from different departments can benefit of consuming information from your process mining dashboard, KPIs, It can be role-based, so you have segregation of duties, whatever. So it's very important also to see this aspect that as a sustainable solution.
That's a very strong message at the end of our podcast, to really explain that process mining is not just a tool to do a one-time process analysis, but it really creates its value when you use it in a sustainable manner, which then on the other hand also requires roles and responsibilities in the organization to really work with the data and feel responsible for implementing measures. Okay. So we are almost at the end of our podcast, and I'd like to wrap up. For you, it was really a pleasure having you here this morning. It was very insightful, very fascinating to hear how you're implementing process mining with Celonis at ABB. And thank you for the questions here in our audience. As usual, this podcast will be available on our BearingPoint website tomorrow. And I also would like our listeners to stay tuned for our next BearingPoint Talks podcast, which is scheduled for Wednesday, August 28th. Same location, same time. The topic will be Digitalization Switzerland, and our guests will be from the Association of Management Consultants in Switzerland, AMCS, and we also are looking forward to Ivo Fora, who is president of Digital Switzerland. And with this, I thank you very much for being here this morning. I say goodbye and wish you a great day.
Thank you very much.
Much.